What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 112. I say dead in the middle of spring ball, really towards the end now. Auburn just wrapped up their spring practice with their 8A game this past Saturday. The majority of SEC teams will be playing their 8A spring games this Saturday on the 13th. And then I believe we have three or four more SEC teams playing the following Saturday on the 20th. So a lot of spring practices are coming to an end now, and with that, the spring transfer portal window is going to open next Tuesday on the 16th. So it's going to be a very active 2 week period. We're going to get into that later on, but Carden, just kind of want to get your thoughts on the Auburn 8A game Saturday. I thought a lot of good takeaways overall, but I want to get your thoughts first, and just what your biggest takeaways were, and did anybody exceed expectations or maybe fall short? Just what were your overall opinions?
Overall opinions, I thought that it was about what was expected. The defense looked phenomenal. That's the number one thing that I'm most excited for about fall. I think is the new defense under DJ Durkin. Obviously, last year under Ron Roberts, Auburn really wasn't a bad defensive team. Had some blunders here and there, but as a whole, they were pretty good. It was the strongest part of Auburn's team. Got to the quarterback better than I expected him to last year. So building off the talent that they have there and the depth they have there, they got a guy in from Texas, Jaron Thompson, actually would have been sack on in the 8A game, and any other team he hits he was running full speed. Nobody even touched him. Peyton Thorne wasn't looking, and he'd hit him right in his chest. Whoever the quarterback is from whatever team, 95% of the time they're going to fumble that ball. So big play there by him, and that probably changes the outcome of what the final score was, 28-27, of how they had it set up. With the defense was up 27-0. So if the offense scored obviously 28 or more, they won. If the defense held them under 27 points, they won. That's how they had it set up. And they went ones on one. So I really like that, best on best. But the defense, man, they were flying around, making plays all day. The coverage looked extremely well. Now, how spring goes, the spring is not end all be all. It is not, this is exactly how we're going to look in the spring, or in the fall. It's not always how it is. You get to see little bits and pieces. They're trying to, the coaching staff's trying to see the depth of the team and how many guys they got that can actually go out there and play for them on Saturdays and give them a chance to win. So they're trying to figure out all that, and then see, guys they don't really know about. They're going to throw them in there and see what they got. And that perspective, to see some of the guys that haven't gotten many reps at practice. So spring is not the end all be all. The ones are only on the field a time or two. But as a whole, I thought the team played really well. But everybody is talking about Cam Coleman. Obviously, everybody was talking about Cam Coleman going into the game, and everybody's talking about him going out of the game, which is what you want, and it gets you excited as an Auburn fan. The last big name recruit I can remember coming into Auburn is Tank Bigsby. As big as highly rated as he was, Tank Bigsby, I believe. I could be wrong on that. Don't come after me, but I believe it was Tank Bigsby. And yeah, he lived up to the hype. I'll say he wasn't as no hate on him. He was a great player, and I love him to death. Wish we had him now, but he wasn't as good as I expected him to be in his career there. Would you agree with that, or am I off base on that? He great running back. He did not live up to the hype to me of what was talked about to him. Am I off base there? I mean, I know I'm an Auburn fan, but am I off base there?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty fair. I mean, like you said, a really solid career, certainly. Probably could have been better if the situation was a little better.
Right.
Too,
it's not all on him. The offensive line wasn't fantastic, but
yeah.
Kerryon Johnson did some crazy things behind an offensive line that wasn't great. And Tank did at times, but he wasn't as consistent as Kerryon Johnson, I would say, in my opinion. More talented, probably, but when the lights turned on and he made plays, maybe not as much. But regardless, Cam Coleman is that guy. The hype has been around him ever since he was coming down to his original commitment between a couple of schools, and it came down to Auburn and Texas A&M and maybe one or two others. And he ended up choosing Texas A&M, and it crushed the Auburn fan base. If you're active on Twitter and you're in that realm, a bunch of Auburn fans were absolutely devastated that they lost Cam Coleman to Texas A&M. A big part of that was Damian Craig. Was his big recruiter, but then Jimbo lost the job. He decommitted, and he committed to Auburn soon after, and then obviously enrolled early and's been there. you look at him in high school, you watch his high school film. Obviously, he's a difference maker and he looks big. But the few months that he got there, from the time you saw him in high school, from the time you saw him again on Auburn's media page, the dude's beefed up. He's definitely been in the weight room, been grinding. He's going to be game ready come August or in September. So I believe he is going to live up to the hype. I believe he did in the spring game. Again, we know how I prefaced the spring game earlier and how it is not to take it with a grain of salt pretty much. But he did show up and show out, and he played extremely well, had Auburn's only touchdown, made 2 really good plays. So I think that is a positive, obviously, for the team and as an Auburn fan, because you got to look back at last year. Obviously, Peyton Thorne didn't go through spring last year. He enrolled after spring. So he's learning on the fly or whatever. So now he's got a full spring under his belt. Obviously started last year, got a full spring under his belt. And you could tell on Saturday that he's head and shoulders better than everybody else in that quarterback room. And he's got more weapons and more, he's got a Swiss Army knife, I'd say now, of wide receivers that he can choose from. Got a guy in from Georgia State. God, I can't think of his name. Number 14. I cannot think of his name.
Robert Lewis. I was going to mention him. I thought he had a nice day too.
Yeah, had a great day. You got him. Obviously, Cam Coleman. Perry Thompson is not an early enrollee. Is expected to play some early. Camden Brown's coming into his own. Number 4. He's been playing extremely well. Was highly rated by the previous staff that obviously recruited him, and they really liked him. Just maybe took a little bit longer to develop than they would have liked. But he's in his own. He's in the. He's where he's expected to be now as a junior, third year in the program. So he's going to turn heads and just gives him another weapon to throw to. So obviously having more weapons like that, and Hugh Freeze saying, Cam Coleman's a day one game changer. He's going to make us look different, going to make our offense different. That's going to help Peyton Thorne obviously perform much better. Last year, he was not great by any means, but he also didn't have a great surrounding cast either. The offensive line's better. Not great, but the offensive line is better, I believe. And definitely the weapons on the outside are much better. So I think that Peyton Thorne's game is going to be elevated this year. Maybe not to an extent of winning, going and playing in Atlanta, but his performance is going to be elevated this year. I fully believe that, especially from the defensive side of the ball. If they can start forcing stops, I know early in the spring game they had a 4th and 1 stop from like the 2 or 3 yard line. It was a fantastic play. But they were swarming all night or all day. So if they can continue to do that and build off that, and that be the team's identity or the defense's identity throughout the season, and they can continue to get better, I like Auburn's chances to at least give the teams that are expected to, be there and compete in Atlanta, give those teams some trouble. Not saying they're going to win, but I think that they have a chance to disrupt some teams' seasons for sure. I think there's a real possibility it could happen with the additions that have been added to Auburn's team since last year.
Yeah, overall, I was had some pretty good takeaways, I think. Like you said, a lot of what you expected to see, you mentioned it right off the top with Cam Coleman. Everybody kind of expected him to come in and be a day one game changer. And I think, he absolutely lived up to that in the little bit we've seen of him so far. He's going to play a huge role this year, make a huge difference, because they haven't had a talent like that at wide receiver in quite some time. So
I don't know. I don't remember the last receiver with that much talent. I don't know that Auburn's ever had one with that much talent ever.
Yeah, like I said,
not in my lifetime.
Yeah, they've had some good ones, like you said, but none have come in as highly regarded and with as much upside as what he possesses. So, yeah, the sky's the limit for him. I think, like you said, and like Hugh Freeze has been saying, it's going to make a day one difference for that offense. And like you noted some of the other guys too, Robert Lewis, Camden Brown, like guys like that. I just think the overall cast is going to be much, much better this year.
Right.
I think Peyton Thorne's going to be a lot better. I think, like as you mentioned too, didn't have spring last year. Just had summer and fall camp. I think the offense is going to be not only more tailored to him, but obviously he's going to be a lot more comfortable operating it, and the cast going to be much better. And I think too, if this was a real game, I think he would have broke off some pretty good runs. I think he had 4 carries for 20 yards. You can't. It's hard to really judge that in a scrimmage when you're not getting hit, but. I think there's going to be some runs in there for him because you saw that at times last year. The run against
Yeah.
Georgia, like there was quite a few games where his legs really made a difference in the Iron Bowl. Had some really good runs that made a difference. So, um, yeah, really curious to see his development, his growth from last year to this year. I think he's going to be much better, and I think the cast around is going to be much better. And you alluded to the defense as well. Yeah, I thought they were just super active early on in the game. Really took the offense some time to get going.
Mhm.
But yeah, Drew really active up front. Some key stops early on and during the scrimmage. So um, defensive line I thought looked better than maybe I expected.
Yeah.
Um, so overall, I think some pretty good takeaways. And uh, I did not know of this kid before watching this, but Towns Magoo, man, I think I'm saying his name's right.
Yeah, you are.
This kid is something else, man. 7-7, the game winner from what 50 plus,
50,
55,
58, I think. 58,
58.
yeah.
Yeah. So obviously with Alex McPherson was down with I believe a hamstring
Yeah.
injury. So but yeah, this kid looks like something special, man. I tell you one thing you can say about Auburn. Now they've had their ups and downs over the past however many years. But one thing stayed the same is they've always had really good kicking.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that has been a thing, and it looks like that trend's going to continue. But yeah, he was the star of the show, really, him and Cam Coleman. But overall, some pretty good takeaways, I
Yeah.
thought, what I
I mean,
saw.
you got to think back in the 90s, and I believe 2000, 2001 is when he left. I mean, Aldell Greco, he's a freaking kicker at Auburn, and he's a household name as an Auburn fan. I mean, like you're right. Since the 90s and 2000s, Auburn has been on a tear with kickers. I mean, the last five kickers that have played West Byram, Cody Parkey, um, the Carlson brothers. So the last four I know all made it to the NFL as kickers, and three of them are still kicking right now. So that's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, and McPherson, I mean, he's got
Actually,
pretty
West
good,
Byram didn't make it to the NFL. I'm wrong there. But
but you know, and with McPherson, he's got good bloodlines, obviously. So
yeah,
his
his brother
brothers
plays for the
played
Bengals, right?
for the
Yeah.
Bengals, yeah. So he was great at Florida. So McPherson's going to be great, but looks like Towns Magoo may be the next in line here eventually. But yeah, big day for him. Like I said, overall, thought you saw some things you wanted to see if you're an
Yeah.
Auburn fan. Um, but yeah, Cam Coleman definitely. That's the headline, and he definitely lived up to the hype. Had that great diving catch pretty early
Yeah.
on. So,
And
yeah, I think he's in for a really good freshman season. He's going to be he's a program changer, no doubt about it.
absolutely. And one more thing on Peyton Thorne. I thought if you watched the game, Chris Doering was on field with Hugh Freeze, and he was speaking with him, while the drive was happening. And there was a drive when Peyton Thorne, was the ones versus ones. And there was throughout. It was the same drive that the Jaron Thompson would have had a sack. It was that same drive. So the whole drive they're marching down the field. He's like, "That's a great read. That's a great read. This is what we'll be doing. We're going to be a RPO team. Basically, we're going to throw touchdowns with our uh, um, offensive line and run protection. Like it's going to happen. We're going to throw lots of touchdowns with our offensive line and run protection. This is what we're going to be. Obviously, there's going to be more wrinkles and stuff added. This is a very, very, very base package, but of what was shown on spring game. But the base of it is going to be run or RPO heavy. So hearing Hugh Freeze constantly say good read, that was what he was supposed to do. He should have seen that, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff, hearing that throughout the whole drive, he did say he should have seen the pressure when Jaron Thompson came off the side. But other than that, he was like everything else. He made a great call, made a check to a change. He changed a call one time in the line of scrimmage. He was like, that was the right call. He should have done that. So hearing that from the coach, hearing that your QB1 is up there and he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do and what's expected of him, that's confidence for fans going into the season from what we saw last year.
Yeah, no doubt. He definitely looked more comfortable. I mean, certainly. Like you said, pretty vanilla, game plan on both sides. I mean, like you said, this isn't anything crazy, but I thought you saw a lot of the things that you want him to do. So I think fans should definitely be feeling more comfortable and more optimistic going forward. And I do think he will take a big step forward. I mean, this is a guy that obviously has had his ups and downs to his college career, but This is a guy with a ton of experience, and I think with the offseason and getting a full offseason now, and with the changes to the offense with Hugh Freeze being a little bit more hands on, a little bit more of a Hugh Freeze offense this year, wasn't really, I think, what Hugh Freeze wanted exactly last year. And this is going to be more of his offense. And I think that'll only benefit him. And as we mentioned, too, the cast around him is only going to help that.
Absolutely. And the other quarterbacks, they did all right. There were some throws that were there. There were some plays being made that were missed because the quarterbacks, missed a throw or threw it behind a guy or whatever, made a wrong read, whatever the case may be. There's definitely a lot of room to grow for the quarterback room, but it is a deep quarterback room and it is a talented quarterback room. So, he's building something there. And I believe that there's the 7.5 is what Vegas has Auburn's win total at right now, preseason win total. I think that is spot on, honestly. I mean, we've talked about it before. 7-8 wins is what we think. I think that Vegas, has got it spot on. And with the roster that Auburn has right now, I think that's about what it's going to be. 7-8 wins, and they're probably going to beat somebody that they're not expected to beat throughout the season. Then again, they're probably going to lose to somebody they're not expected to lose to throughout the season. It's just, that's college football. That's Auburn football for you. But I think that they're good enough to compete. We saw it last year. They competed with the top teams in the country all the way down to the wire multiple times. So I think that this year is the time to see how big of a step you can take. We talked about a couple of weeks ago. This is the biggest year, in my opinion, for a head coach over a new program is year 1 to year 2, and how big of a step you take, how big of a step forward you take, because that really helps define where you're going to go in your career at that school. And so I think this year, they got to prove something, but I think they've got the cast to be able to prove that, hey, we're clearly better and we're on the right trajectory to get back to where we expect to be.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, I think I'd have to go back and kind of look there. It's been a minute since I've looked at the schedule, but yeah, I think they're going to be right around that range. I mean, certainly they're going to be better than a year ago. I mean, they're going to be much more talented. And I kind of want to tie this in because we're going to talk a little transfer portal in a minute. But Auburn's a team that's expected to be very active among many teams in the SEC and around the country. Never before have you obviously had a window. I feel like this spring cycle and this portal window coming up, even though it's not as big, the volume is going to be so heavy. And like I said, with the transfer portal, it's still fairly new. I mean, we're only a few years in, but obviously they changed the dates around a little bit. So I think you're going to see a lot of guys use these spring games and 8A games as obviously to help where they're currently at, either that or use that kind of as a platform to showcase a little bit to jump in the portal and find a different landing spot. But how active you think Auburn's going to be in the portal? And then kind of, I know some more SEC teams around the league are obviously going to be very active as well. Alabama's got some spots to fill. I think LSU's going to be active. But how active do you think Auburn's going to be, and what positions you think they'll kind of target a little bit more?
I think they'll be, fairly active, especially obviously plugging holes where you need. I think they'll probably go after a defensive lineman, maybe 2. You can never have to. That's the one position that if you've got a star there and you get a star that transfers in, it doesn't matter. You rotate guys in and out of that position so much, and there's 4 of them, 3 of them minimum playing at a time, usually 4 of them, depending on obviously what defense you run. But you rotate so many guys, so you can never have too many of those. So I obviously think they'll go after defensive linemen. Couldn't hurt to try and go get another receiver. I mean, obviously you can't have too many of them either, I don't think. But you're not going to go get it. Well, I don't think you're going to go get a quarterback. Maybe you do. I don't think if you get whatever quarterback you get, I don't think it's going to come in and win the job, because I cannot remember the guy's name that said this, but I heard this on Mac and Cube earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday. He was saying that, if you go and get a guy out of the portal at quarterback and you expect him to come in and compete with Peyton for the job and potentially win the job, you're going to be right back where you were last year with Peyton Thorne, because he's going to have to learn a whole new system in 4 months and continue learning it while he's in season playing games. So he made a good point there. So I don't think it's crucial to go after a quarterback, and I don't think they're going to go after a quarterback But defensive line, linebackers, and receivers, I think is probably what they'll go after. But definitely defensive line.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because that seems to be a theme, around the SEC, around the country. I was listening to Josh Pay on his show talk about the portal and expecting it to be very wild, and pretty much everybody that's in the industry covers the sport is expecting that as well. But he was specifically talking about a premier defensive lineman, that all American type of player that's going to enter the portal, and he's not even sure if his own team knows about it yet. Like it's kind of crazy. Some of the things that are going on now, but expecting a lot of teams to be active for defensive linemen. You mentioned Auburn. LSU is one that's really expected. I would think the same for Texas as well, because they lost several, really high caliber defensive linemen for last year's team. So there's already actually one in the portal. Bear Alexander, the former Georgia D lineman, went to USC. He's expected to enter the transfer portal again. And I was just listening to a clip about him. This is actually this will be, if he does indeed transfer, this will be his seventh school in 7 years going back to high school. He went to 3 or 4 different high schools, and now this will be his third college that he's been to if he does transfer. So it'd be 7 in 7 years. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, obviously a really talented player, but not a guy that's necessarily bought in everywhere he's been. So, but a really talented player that I think could help some people out. And then I think running back too is going to be a pretty sought after position. I believe his name is Damian Mitchell. I believe the Oregon State running back. I could have his name wrong, but he is expected to enter the portal. He's 1,000-yard rusher, over 1,000-yard rusher last year. And it was funny when they reported that he was entering the portal, they put under it how much money he was expected to make at Oregon State. I've hardly ever seen that in a report where it was reporting a guy was going to the portal, and they are also reporting what he was going to make in NIL money with Oregon State this year, and it was $400,000. So if you want him, you're probably going to pay over $400,000. So kind of crazy, man. We're in crazy times, but as a fan, it's very interesting to follow. I mean, it gives podcasters like us a ton to talk about, but overall, it's not in the best interest of the game, and we've talked about that, a million times. But I'm expecting next Tuesday, the 16th, when the portal opens. It runs through the 30th, so it's open 2 weeks. I would expect not only some really high quality players, but a high volume of players also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, it is what it is. It's a game of college football now, and it's just part of it now. So you get on or get off, and I'll never stop watching college football. It's just what I got to deal with now. So obviously, it gives you some excitement in the off season. You see a name hit the portal, like oh my God, this guy's in the portal. So it definitely gives you some talking points for 3 or 4 days till the next one comes out. It's fun. Lets you stay in it. Stay plugged into it. So I enjoy it, but also I enjoy it for the clickbait factor, I guess, and being able to talk about it. But like you said, for the life of the game, I don't really like it, but it is what it is, and it's just what we got to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be that way for at least a while longer, for sure.
For the foreseeable future, for sure, yeah.
But, I mean, it's crazy because with this portal cycle, and that springtime is really the best time to develop your team, get some of your young guys reps. Now there's coaches having to give young guys reps because they're worried about certain guys leaving.
Yeah.
And it's amazing these coaches are going to be through with spring and not know who's going to be on their team in the fall. I mean, it's just completely wild. Like I said, I think these spring games are going to be a showcase for a lot of these players because, like I said, a high volume is going to enter the portal during that 2 weeks coming up. And I think these spring games they may not all be nationally televised, but they're all going to be, at least accessible, whether they're streamed or, on main, ESPN or whatnot. So I think these spring games are just going to be a showcase for a lot of these guys that maybe not at their current team, but showcasing for their next team because they already know they're going to enter the portal. They're just using it to kind of put more film out there, basically. So crazy system we have. I mean, I think this one is going to be as unique as any because, as we were talking about earlier, there's going to be teams that maybe don't think they're playoff worthy or championship caliber that could become championship caliber after this portal window's open, or could become a playoff, a true playoff contender after this cycle's over. So, I mean, there's teams that are really, really going to get better, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
going to be teams on the other end of it that are going to get completely gutted and may go from a playoff team to out of a playoff spot, after this cycle's over. So it's going to be absolutely wild to see. Like I said, all of the SEC teams I expect to be very, very active in this. Specifically, ones we mentioned earlier, Auburn, Alabama's got some spots to fill. A lot of transfers that left after Saban retired. And then once Kalen DeBoer came in, I think they did a good job of retaining for the most part, but there's still several key positions that they want to get their scholarship numbers higher at. Kalen DeBoer was kind of referenced it recently, saying like, "Hey, there's a number of guys you got to have at each position just to get through a season, get through
Mm-hmm.
fall camp." And he's like, "We're not really where we want to be in several spots. Offensive line, I think, will be one. Defensive backs, an area that they really got hit hard in the transfer portal. Got a lot of talent there, but just some young guys and some inexperience. So, think that's an area they could look as well. But as you said, defensive line is always a big, big target area for teams. So, yeah, I think it's going to be super active, and I'm very curious to see how it turns out. We'll be all over it. Talking about it here. Just kind of looking ahead, though, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of A-Day game, a lot of spring games this weekend. I think the majority of the SEC plays their spring game this Saturday. I believe it's around 7 or 8 teams or so. And then I believe 4 the following Saturday on the 20th, as I referenced earlier. So only a few teams have wrapped up so far, so the majority still to play their spring game. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what develops of that. But as I mentioned, with the portal coming up, these rosters could look completely different or a lot different going in the fall. So we'll have to stay on top of it, but excited to see what comes of it and follow it as the weeks go on here.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you back next week.